35 million people were enrolled in the Starbucks Rewards program the year the company began its longest sales decline in 2008. They were not leaving. They were not complaining. They were showing up 3 times a week, paying $7.40, scanning their app, and earning stars. The most loyal customers in the history of American coffee were funding 8 consecutive price increases while the company quietly removed everything those customers had originally paid for. The loyalty program was not built to reward you. It was built to measure exactly how much you would absorb before you stopped coming back. For 10 years, you absorbed more than the company deserved. Then you stopped. 6 consecutive quarters of global same-store sales declines. A $113 million CEO who cannot stop the bleeding. This is how a loyalty program broke a $135 billion dream. The program did not start as a measurement tool. To understand how it became one, you have to go back to where Schultz started and why he built something worth extracting in the first place. Howard Schultz grew up in the Bayview houses in Canarsie, Brooklyn, watching his father work jobs that offered nothing in return. Truck driver, cab driver, factory worker, never more than $20,000 a year. In 1961, Fred Schultz broke his hip and ankle on a delivery job and lost his income, his health coverage, and his dignity in the same week. His wife was 7 months pregnant. The system had no safety net, and the family fell through it. In 1982, he joined a small Seattle coffee roaster called Starbucks as director of retail operations and marketing. 4 stores, whole beans, modest ambitions. The founders had no interest in building a chain. Schultz had every interest. They would not move, so he had no choice but to leave and prove it himself. He pitched 242 investors. 217 said no. The idea of paying $2 for a cup of coffee in America struck most of them as absurd. But Schultz had spent time in Milan walking into espresso bars across the city, watching office workers stop their mornings to stand at a counter, talking to each other, not for the caffeine. The place belonged to them in a way that neither home nor work did. He was not selling coffee. He was selling what those Milan bars had, and he was convinced Americans would pay for it. He opened Il Giornale on April 8, 1986. It worked immediately. 18 months later, the original Starbucks founders decided to sell. The business they had refused to expand was now being acquired by the employee they had refused to listen to. Schultz bought it for $3.8 million in August 1987. By the early 1990s, he had proven the third-place concept worked at scale, expanding from 17 stores to over 100. He did not know yet how completely that moment would arrive. The product that made the brand a cultural force arrived in 1995. The Frappuccino, acquired along with a small Boston area chain called the Coffee Connection in 1994 for $23 million, launched nationally and became a phenomenon. By the early 2000s, there was a Starbucks on every other corner and the line was still out the door because the experience justified the price. By 2012, the Frappuccino alone was generating over $2 billion a year. You were not paying for coffee. You were paying for belonging somewhere, a table that was yours, a barista who knew your order, a place that was neither home nor work, but felt like both. The loyalty program launched in 2008. Mobile payment went national in 2011. Mobile order and pay rolled out in 2015. By 2018, eMarketer confirmed the Starbucks app had more active mobile payment users in the United States than Apple Pay, 23.4 million to 22 million. Wall Street looked at that number and made a decision that would feel correct for 3 years and catastrophic for 10. They decided Starbucks was a technology company. Analysts called it an ecosystem, a platform, a digital flywheel. The loyalty program had 35 million active members, driving roughly 60% of United States company revenue. The stock followed the story upward to a peak market cap of approximately $135 billion in the summer of 2021. A coffee chain priced like a software business on the back of a loyalty program built by people who came in every morning because they felt like they belonged there. But the thing Wall Street had decided was a technology moat was quietly turning every Starbucks location into a machine that nobody had designed and nobody knew how to run. Mobile order and pay had looked like genius in 2015. Submit your order from the parking lot, walk in, pick it up. But by 2022, the same system was breaking stores from the inside. A customer could stack more than a dozen modifier options onto a single drink from their phone, and a barista had to build it in under 2 minutes while managing the drive-through queue and the walk-in line simultaneously. By 2024, Technomic data showed roughly 8% of Starbucks customers waiting between 15 and 30 minutes for their order. Starbucks had to announce formal time targets for the first time in company history. 4 minutes for in-store and drive-through, 12 minutes for mobile and delivery. Starbucks had to set a timer on itself because it had forgotten how to run a coffee shop. And while the stores were breaking down around them, Starbucks raised prices anyway. 8 times between 2020 and 2023. Average ticket climbed 8% in fiscal year 2022, then another 6% in fiscal year 2023. They kept charging more while delivering less. But the price hikes were not the most important thing happening during those years. In June 2023, a federal jury awarded $25.6 million to Shannon Phillips, a regional manager whom Starbucks had fired in the aftermath of the 2018 Philadelphia arrests, when 2 black men were detained at a Starbucks location while waiting for a business meeting. Phillips argued she was let go because she was white, as the company scrambled to show accountability. The jury agreed. It was the largest employment verdict in Starbucks history. The company whose founder watched his own father get crushed by a system with no safety net had spent years managing the fallout of that day badly enough to lose a $25.6 million jury verdict over it. But the customers had already started doing the math on their own. CenterCheck data showed weekday transactions at urban Starbucks locations without drive-thrus down 13% from 2022 highs. Placer.ai reported foot traffic consistently underperforming the broader coffee chain average through 2024 and 2025, a period when Dutch Bros saw visits rise by double digits year over year. Starbucks was losing the casual customer to anyone who offered a shorter line and a cheaper cup. On TikTok, a genre emerged around the cost of a daily Starbucks run, with people filming themselves calculating weekly totals and reacting with visible shock. In November 2023, a geopolitical controversy triggered the boycott Starbucks movement. Over 7,000 TikTok videos were posted. Roughly $11 billion in market value were lost over the following 19 days. The boycott faded. The math did not. Howard Schultz saw it coming. He returned as interim CEO in April 2022, talked about restoring the experience, and handed the company to Laxman Narasimhan in March 2023. In the spring of 2024, 4 days after Starbucks reported its worst quarter since the early pandemic, with revenue declining for the first time since 2020 and the stock dropping 17% in a single session, Schultz published a post on LinkedIn. He wrote that the answer did not lie in data, but in the stores. He wrote that there must be contrition. He did not name Narasimhan directly. He did not have to. The founder of the company was publicly telling the world his own chosen successor had lost control of the kitchen. Narasimhan was gone within weeks. The board hired Brian Nicole, the CEO who had genuinely turned Chipotle around after its 2015 food safety crisis. The stock surged 24% on the announcement. Nicole would not relocate to Seattle. Starbucks built him a remote office in Newport Beach, California at company expense. He commutes by company Gulfstream G550 roughly 3 days a week in Seattle, with an additional $250,000 per year available for personal air travel. His total first-year compensation came to approximately $113 million. But the most revealing moment of the entire Back to Starbucks campaign was not the hiring or the jet. It was a policy change buried in the same announcement. In January 2025, the company announced it was restoring the third place, bringing back the coffeehouse feel, expanding free refills, returning the condiment bar, welcoming people back. In the same announcement, they quietly reversed the open door policy, the one introduced in 2018. The policy that said anyone could sit in a Starbucks without buying anything because the space belonged to the community, not just paying customers. That policy was the third place in writing, one sentence that meant what Schultz had spent 30 years saying out loud. Nickel canceled it. Restrooms and seating now for customers only. The same week they told you the third place was coming back, they changed the lock on the door. The $135 billion story is now a turnaround plan, and the market is still deciding whether to believe it. Every other video about this ends the same way. They forgot who they were. If they just go back to basics, it can all be fixed. That framing lets Starbucks off the hook. And they have been counting on it, because the more uncomfortable truth is that Starbucks knew exactly who you were. They knew how long a loyalty program could keep a customer paying for something getting incrementally worse before they noticed. They knew what the third place meant to you, which is exactly why they kept using the language of it while removing the substance. The table was not gone when you finally stopped going. It had been gone for years. You just kept paying because the cup still had your name on it. If you want to see the same story play out in a different country with a different brand and a different excuse, that video is on screen now.